Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out to this event here at the North Shore Arts Association, put on in coordination with us, the Gloucester Writers Center. My name is Eric Parkinson. I'm Director of Programming at the Gloucester Writers Center, and I wanted to take a minute just to let you know about some things we have coming up over this fall season. Next Thursday at the Gloucester Writers Center, 126 East Main Street, we will have a reading from 4 of the poets from the Chive Collective. This collective of women poets includes such names as Eileen Cleary and others. Well, I might have a favorite. Anyway, in addition to that, to cap this fall, on November 21st, we will be having Dr. Seema Samar. She was the head of the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Afghanistan before the Taliban took back over, and is a human rights activist and a women's rights activist who was foundational to promoting women's rights in Afghanistan after the U.S. invasion there. So please be looking out for tickets to that event, again, November 21st. Okay? Thank you. Now, tonight we have the distinct honor of helping our dear friend and the author JoeAnne Hart launch her new novel, Arroyo Circle. Woo! Applause. JoeAnne will spend some time reading from the book, followed by an interview and conversation with Maureen Aylward from Town Green. They will discuss the environmentalism in creative writing, resiliency, and all sorts of issues related to that, I hope. Yes? Yep. So let me get out of your way and hand it over to JoeAnne.
Thanks. Okay. So we're not amplified in spite of this here, that we're recording for posterity as the Gloucester Writers Center does. The Gloucester Writers Center does amazing work, literary and otherwise, in this town and the region. Please support the Writers Center whenever you can. I mean, because they help people start writing, they help them get to the finish line, they do just amazing work. Henry, is there like a donation bucket here tonight?
We'll find something
We'll find something so that if you are so compelled that you can make a donation. So this is my 5th book of all things. It is my, I think, 3rd novel. The other 2 books were a story collection and a memoir. And this novel is particularly close to my heart. I started writing this when my brother died, a homeless alcoholic, in 2017. Novels take a very long time. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to read for just 15 minutes from 2, can everybody hear okay? Yeah. Okay, from 2 different sections, 2 different characters, so you can sort of get a feel for it. And then I'm going to ask Maureen Aylward to come up. She's over there, and she's the director of Town Green, and she's going to come and talk about the climate crisis in the book, and talk about how that affects our lives, fictional lives, everybody. I mean, that we're now so keenly aware, especially this week, with the poor North Carolina. It could be us next time. So here we are. I'm going to start a couple of pages of chapter 1, which is in the point of view of Shelley, who is handmaiden to a hoarder. And the book takes place in Boulder, Colorado, where Gordon, my husband, and I, we met there in the late 70s, and then eventually moved back here. And And there he is, still. You want a drink, you see him. Also, I want to make sure everybody takes, I have bandanas back there, and everybody can go home with a bandana. It's in case of wildfire. You know, just dunk it in water and put it around your face and escape. So, I don't even know if you later on I'll be signing books if you would like, and those who bought a book also get a mini Tito's, because Tito's vodka also plays an important part in this book. Yes. Okay, chapter 1. Pavement heat crawled up Shelley's bare legs like some hairy animal as she circled the old Accord, airing the wretched thing out. Leave it to her to choose a car in heat retentive red. As she opened the doors, dragon breath lashed out, inescapable but by no means unavoidable. It's not like she forgot to unfold the sun deflector and put it in the windshield. She just thought she'd be back in time. And no time was what she had to get her final chore done, rushing around King Soopers with the list, scooping up anything that hadn't already been delivered over the long course of the shopping day. When Mimi needed something, she needed it now. Even this tub of kitty litter, which did not often go on sale. Back in aisle 8, Shelley had wrangled it up to the kid's seat of the shopping cart to make it easier to load into the car, but it didn't seem so easy now. Plans made in air conditioning didn't always pan out under the sun, especially not with this vile wildfire smoke drifting into town, making it hard even to breathe. Locking both hands on the yellow tub's handle, she gave her wonky back a heads up and lift, over and down into the Accord's trunk with a thud. She wasn't as strong as she used to be. She sure as shoot was not as young. The 24 block of toilet paper was unwieldy, but pliable. It could be squeezed to almost any shape and still bounce back, so she forced it next to the tub. Then in went the bottled prunes, shredded coconut, spiced almonds, and a 2-pack of ammonia, all of which fit into one of the hundreds of reusable bags that Mimi had acquired over the years and insisted Shelley use when shopping. For the environment, Mimi explained. Shelley removed the meatloaf dinner she'd picked up for herself and tossed it in the front seat. Then, with one hand, she slammed the trunk shut and with the other aimed the empty shopping cart towards the cart corral. It missed. Damn, she said. Her aim was usually so good her carts rarely even brushed the metal sides as they rolled on in. She blamed the pavement, which was hot enough to melt the tires. A teen in red King Soopers smock was pushing a train of carts nearby and stopped to stare right at Shelley. Her eyeglasses reflected the yellow sun like an insect. Fudgesicles. Shelley hadn't turned away quick enough. After a brief check-in with her better self and already begrudging the amount of sweat it would cost her, she walked over to set things right. She was halfway there when she nearly got run over by an overflowing cart at takeoff speed. The woman propelling the cart was rushing down the aisle, talking on the phone while fussing with a baby in the child seat. It was too hot to be moving so fast, but it was not Shelley's business to tell her. As it was, the woman never even looked up as she rushed by. Parking lots were as dangerous as highways these days, with everyone so distracted. Shelley retrieved her empty cart and maneuvered it between the metal guards, then paused for some recognition from the King Soopers teen. A friendly nod would do, but no, just that insect stare. Maybe she was afraid she'd lose her job if everyone was a good supermarket citizen who returned their carts. Skin was about as thin as the soap bubbles these days. When Shelley got back to her car, it seemed hotter than before, like it had sucked up the parking lot heat instead of releasing it, making the vinyl inside smell like industrial fluid. She rearranged a bath towel under her bum to protect her tender pink thighs from the heat. She didn't usually wear shorts to work. She tried to look professional, like the manager of an estate, and not some domestic worker. But by the end of the summer, she really didn't give a hoot how she looked, and neither did Mimi. The engine started with a loud cough, but held steady. The air conditioner was cranked up high, but didn't do a whole lot except stir the heat, so she opened the windows as well. The weak AC was on her own to-do list, but there was never enough money. As much as she liked her title of house manager, the salary was just meh. If she got paid on commission, she'd be rolling in gold. Even 1% of Mimi's purchases would make for a considerable take-home check. Even 0.5%. But since that wasn't the case, she had to wait until things broke down completely, and then decide if they were worth replacing. Body parts, too. There was an empty space in her pie hole where a tooth should sit. She choked on her own spit when a dentist told her how much an implant cost. Even a bridge was beyond her budget. It would all have to wait, wouldn't it? Her house, car, and mouth all held together with spit and string. Before she drove off, she sent a text to Mimi to let her know she got everything on the list, then took a photo of the receipt and sent that to her as well. Shelley immediately got back a screen of pounding hearts emojis, and her job here was done. As she backed up, she had to inch along because that shopper who almost ran her over was in the spot next to hers, putting her groceries away. She had all the car doors open and was trying to load stuff with the baby carrier in one hand. A paper grocery bag was ripping even as she lifted it from the cart. She should be using reusable bags, tough as nails. I'm going to jump to chapter 11 to do a few pages of Les, who is the NOAA scientist who lives in the creek behind her house. So, Les is an alcoholic, which explains the Tito's. And it also explains his sometimes not perfect grammar.
Page 71.
Page 71. That's right, thank you. I forgot so many had books. Les sat cross-legged under eerie orange skies, like on a distant planet, watching the pyrocumulus clouds billow from the vents of hell in the canyon, rising up over the foothills, the fire now forming its own weather. No, not a distant planet, but our own grim future here at last. He heard mangy street dogs barking up and down Pearl, defending the indefensible. High noon and street lights flickering on. A Hindu Purana falls into his brain pan. When this era comes to an end, the world will be set ablaze by the sun god, then drowned by centuries of unbearable rain. Fitting end for a species fueled by fire, he announced to an ant head-butting the grape seed he'd wedged in a pavement crack. Flame on demand was a hot idea back in the Ice Age, as we, squatted around the first human fires. Such delicious warmth, and portable to boot. Put humans on the move, expanding their niche north, taking their own hot sun with them. Keeps the saber-toothed beasts at bay, too. One day, a hunk of bloody mammoth meat fell in the sacred fire, starts the glands salivating. Cooked food. Pre-digested by heat, it begets the fat human brain and skinny gut. Energy goes into thinking, not digesting. Modern humans not possible without combustion. Now combustion about to make humans impossible. What goes around comes around and around. The more it burns, the more it will burn. In a pocket, the discovery of a crumpled cigarette ignites it with a match. breathes it in, blows it out, instant dragon. Starbucks cup out on the pavement in front of him. A service to the community, not a beggar, as Officer Sokos calls him, certainly not a vagrant. He has a home. It is all around him. He stares into middle distance, not trying to catch eyes, third eyes or otherwise. As a rule, he lets earthly existence happen to him, although since he needs his sips, he has to give it a little nudge now and again. A hand-scrawled sign is neatly propped up against his knees. I am the lily of the field. I am the bird of the air. Passers-by smile and toss pocket change, missing the small target of the cup, since no one wants to get too close. Dimes and quarters hit pavement and bounce, rolling off a little distance. Les does not go after them, letting coins gather around his person as if he were a golden idol. If other homeless come to collect, let them. It was all one. But a dollar bill, hands off. He'd make a grab for one before it gets airborne. It would be like letting a sip blow away, especially on a day like this, the katabatic winds coming sideways on the slope. One house near Flagstaff Mountain was smoldering, spewing billows of suppressed energy up into the troposphere. The sun cut through the smoke and slanting rays like a scene from the Old Testament, and not in a good way. It was probably never in a good way. Judgment weather. There is a lot to be judgmental about, but on a deeply personal level, it was a good day for sips. Everyone walking past, college kids, shoppers, tourists, and God bless them, the Buddhists, all had one eye on the flame-breathing dragon creeping down the foothills and the other on their mortality. They gave less offerings to placate the beast, knowing deep down that the dragon was sent not by the gods, but by drought, beetle kill, and human carelessness, all accelerated by global warming. Fire was not the enemy. The gods were not the enemy. We were the enemy. We were the dragon to be tamed, and an offering to less was a shortcut to cleansing the soul, anything rather than change their lives. He counted his gelt, 5 Tito's. He folded up his sign and flattened the cup, storing both in the vast inner folds of his jacket. Time for the long walk to Hazel's. He still grieved Liquor Mart, an easy trek, but now a forced march to 28th. Sometimes he took the bus, the hop, the city called it, trying to sound hip, but walking was good for the old body, kept him alive for what it was worth. Alive and drinking, so much better than meditation. Inebriate, don't meditate. He'd use that sign to great effect. He could always find food, soup kitchens, dumpsters, even the cult deli if he could stomach religious predation for free food. But alcohol, like any spiritual enhancer, had to be sought. It had to be earned. Vodka transformed his sense of self into a long, luminous present and gave him a blessed moment of immortality. A fast horse running through the hills named nothing. He didn't get drunk, he got disembodied, just like the gods. When he came out of Hazel's, he downed a sip for a quick start out of the gate. A better view of the ridge, this end of Pearl, everyone staring up at Flagstaff. He marveled at the speed with which the dragon was sprinting through dry vegetation, racing, leaping, climbing, junipers going up in flames like fireworks, splitting and twisting, then collapsing in a spray of sparks. The house that had been smoldering in dark veils had ignited, fully engaged, blossoming into a million scarlet petals of a single flower where a roof had been, the walls cupping the flame like hands. Incineration could be felt to the bone. No eyes could turn away. Some were crying. He could feel the synergy of fear in his gut. The vodka soothed it with numbness, feeding his inner dragon, and from his placated brain rose the words of the Buddha in his fire sermon. Everything must burn, my monks, less said out loud. And here we are, finally, the world a burning house. Thank you. And now I'm going to invite Maureen Aylward to come up and sit with me. And Maureen, as I said, the director of Town Green, and she is a friend, and she works tirelessly in this community to help us prepare for what is coming and what is already here. And I'm sure some of you saw participated in the preparing for an emergency that they held last week online, which I might make sure you get a bandana. Serves a lot of purposes in an emergency. So Maureen and I are Maureen's going to ask me questions
I'm
about
going to
the
ask JoeAnne a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. Thank you so much for having me here, JoeAnne. It means a lot, and it's so nice to see so many folks. So JoeAnne, thank you for that reading. I have a couple of questions for you. So the first one is that the book interweaves all of these environmental aspects, both of the climate crisis. Do you need me to speak up? There's no mic.
Yeah.
So the book interweaves environmental aspects of the climate crisis, like wildfires, droughts, flash floods, and extreme heat, all things that we're getting very familiar with. And it's all portrayed through the lives of your characters, each one engulfed in their own crises, made worse by environmental, social, emotional, and economic impacts that somehow can be traced back to climate change. Can you talk about how you found your way into weaving these crises together?
Wow, okay. Well, I think, first of all, the crises are all around us all the time. So in just any writing, especially in places, the novel set in Boulder, Colorado, and there's a lot of potential for crisis all the time, except that they, like Asheville, thought they were protected, and we have found out through the Marshall Fire, which happened after I wrote about a fire in Boulder, that they are not. But floods do happen fairly regularly in Boulder. So there's that there's always this element right now that our Earth could turn on us. And so what I do is that I've got my characters who are already stressed out with their own lives. And then the climate, like just extreme heat, everything becomes another stressor. Wildfire smoke itself, people notoriously make bad decisions in wildfire smoke. And, people are living with it for weeks and months on a time, and they can't even think straight anymore. So that was like part of it. There were a lot of bad decisions made in the book, and a lot of that was because of the wildfires going on around them. And so, like any novel, you start out with like one character, maybe two, and it takes years, and you just sort of find your way, and you pick up little things along the way. I started the book in 2017 when my brother died, and my brother was a homeless alcoholic, and for most of his life. And so I sort of started the book just to maintain a relationship with him. And then there was also this anecdote that I'd always wanted to use, and then, put the two together. And that was a friend of mine in Boulder, because I've always gone back. I was there just this summer for a memorial. A friend of mine was shopping for her hoarder boss, and that she bought kitty litter and put it in the trunk of her car, and somebody called 911 and said she'd kidnapped a baby. And, and it was like, we laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny then. She was surrounded by police with guns. And her house was surrounded by a SWAT team with her husband in there. It was like, all because somebody, so, and so things go go south from there. So that, and then just like climate, I write a great deal about climate. I research a great deal about climate. It's like I know a lot about it, and so it's just always there in my work these days, no matter what I'm writing. Everybody is going to, whereas we are all affected now, my characters become affected by it. Yeah.
It's very effective.
Yeah.
So, a question about Les. And
Les.
you just read about Les from chapter 11, but he's my favorite character in the book,
Yeah.
for sure. And he obviously struggles and has his struggles, but there's freedom in this character from material things, and there's this focus on nature that comes through spirituality and science, mysticism, consciousness. There's cosmic connections. There's this ancient wisdom that just oozes out of him, and all the ancient prehistoric history too. Some of that is in that chapter. So there's also just this depth of caring and compassion and lesson. I know that there's these lessons that we can find in this character through some of the things that I just mentioned, but for us to all use as we think about the climate crisis and how it affects us. Could you talk a little bit more about Les, since you read about him?
So at the core of the novel, it moves, the core of the novel is about human carelessness. It's about human carelessness with the earth, but it's human carelessness with each other. It is just human carelessness, and except for Les, who is like not the most commendable human being ever, but he is like the moral core of the book. He is definitely the moral center, because he's sort of given everything up in order to live this metaphysical life that he does. Les is sort of a shapeshifter. You don't all live in Boulder, so you might not be familiar with shape-shifting, which is, where you inhabit an animal spirit to go elsewhere. And Les does that with the help of Tito's. And so he, and so the whole course of the novel is going from this incredible carelessness to that maybe some characters care, by the end. And Les is like just always steady, like throughout the whole thing. And he is considered, obviously considered an outsider, and nobody listens to him, but he is really the one who understands like the universe. He's very metaphysical. There's a lot of, he is a scientist at NOAA. His specialty is cloud science. In fact, I think we're set up here to be behind these clouds. But he is great interest in quantum physics, and the more you know about quantum physics, the less the world makes sense, and the more you don't even think that you're here anymore. I mean, it just leads you down. And so that's sort of where he is. That is, he has gone down that rabbit hole, and he's just this bunch of atoms, wandering around and letting people give money to him, that he is a service to the community, because then they get to wash their sins by giving money to him. And he is an important part of the community that way. And then he may or may not give any advice, but just him being there and accepting help is actually a lesson in itself. So.
Yeah, thank you for talking about Les.
Yeah.
Also, of course, on the cover of the book, there's a shadow of a hawk, right?
Yeah.
And birds play also central characters.
Potential. Yeah.
And I especially loved all the crow references, and the hawks and owls too. But I was especially moved by the chapters that you wrote about the COVID pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
And the crows and the other birds. How did that come to you?
Yeah.
And do you have that same mystical connection with birds that you described?
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that the crows and I have a mystical connection. Yes, I do. You know, when I walk out of the house, they're up in the trees and they're making noise, and I just know they're saying, well, there she is. And they call me she or her. And yes, and we keep, as many of you know, we keep rescued livestock. We are very connected to animals, and we are in the middle of the Audubon Sanctuary. There's a lot of birds, and I'm not like a bird watcher. I'm like, bird watchers would come through and say, did you see the blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I wouldn't know that blah, 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 ever. But I do feel but I grow the plants for them, and I feel as if we have a connection with them. The COVID, yes, there's a lot of birds, especially in the COVID scenes, because they're the only ones out in the world then. We're all locked up, and they're like the only ones even that can visit patients in the hospitals. You know, they're outside the thing. I am wearing feathers. I'm thematically dressed. I'm wearing a feather shirt. I've got a little piece of jewelry with a red bee. Don't know what that's about, but there are insects also in the book. And, so the birds, so the crows are always signaling to humans, like they're especially in the COVID scenes, like they're hanging out, they're waiting for dumpsters. I don't know if you know that around the world, in industrialized countries, especially like New York City, Boston, urban areas, during COVID, the dumpsters were empty because the restaurants were closed, which meant that the rats and the crows were all going elsewhere looking for food. And it was like this one of those forgotten things, because we try to forget, but that was going on. So, the crows are always in the book, like, food's here, look in the dumpster, oh, what's in this, like, white trailer? And Les, of course, especially being a shapeshifter, is totally like, he knows exactly what they're saying. It takes other characters in the book a longer time to listen to the birds and listen to the animals, but Les has always been like connected. Might be the Tito's.
I think it's the birds.
I think it's birds. Yeah, lots of birds.
So I thought we'd take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Great. Does anybody have a question for JoeAnne? Maybe anything? Here's one back here. Right. Sure, go ahead.
Margie, you want to stand up so we can hear you? Go.
And repeat the question.
Yeah, I'll move it. Oh.
Yeah, great.
Wait, it's not on.
Not working, but speak up. I was wondering about the title, and it's,
Wait, louder.
She wants you to pronounce the book name.
Oh, the title. You want me to pronounce it?
so that is a dry, like a gulch?
Arroyo. Yes, Arroyo Circle. I didn't know until, the book was well under production. And then my publisher tried to, she's in Vermont, it's Green Writers Press, and it's an environmental press, and she on the phone and she can't pronounce the word. She can't pronounce the title of the book, which has been in production for months. And I'm like, Arroyo. And that's why I first found out that nobody in the East is familiar with that word. It is a Western word, Arroyo, and it's in fact not even that much used in Boulder, but Boulder will pick up Western words and use them as street names. Arroyo is much more southwestern, not mountain states, but arroyo means basically a seasonal creek, that it's dry most of the year, and then in the spring the water comes. And in Boulder, actually, they use the word creek, which may be not running all year, but Arroyo Circle, I don't even know where that came from, except I had it from the very first minute I started writing, and nobody pushed back on it. And so I just, And it's also like the circle, that it was important like a circle, because there's a lot of web stuff going on and global, that it's its own little world of its own there. And Arroyo just sounded better than, I think, than like Creek Circle. So I think, yeah. But yes, Arroyo. And I have asked Spanish speakers to repeat it to me, and the R's are rolled, and I can't do that. It's a Spanish word.
I was just wondering how intentional it was and reflective of what the book is about.
How what?
How intentional it was and reflective of what the book is about.
Oh, yeah, just that it was, yeah, it's just, you know, it's sometimes writing, it's just like stuff comes to you, and that name was there from the beginning, which is not always true, and that it just came to me because it was I just put her on the street, and I needed it in a certain place that it had to be a dead end in a circle. And you know, it's like there's like web stuff going on in the book, and that's also like the circle of the web of life. You know, I probably have notes somewhere that says like, what title, you know, early on, title, question mark, yeah. So.
Another question from the audience. Patty, over here.
Oh. Yep.
Patty?
Do
Okay.
you usually come up with the title, you just said you came up with it first in this book? Is that happens a lot with your other books, or?
Oh, no, the title came oddly right at the beginning.
Right, does that happen a lot with all?
No,
No.
no.
You'll find the title at the end? or-
Yeah, in there somewhere, and you just change, and a little tip here, because I know a lot of you are writers. The title is, you don't really get to choose the title. Once it's published, that is totally considered a marketing decision, and that is up to the publisher to name your book, to choose the title. And so I've been very lucky, I guess. I mean, I think this past publisher, she was like afraid to suggest something else because she felt like, oh my God, she couldn't even pronounce it. It must be very rough. And so, but like the Stamford, the memoir, that I didn't know the title till very late in it. That was University of Iowa Press. Chose that title, chose that cover, everything without consulting me at all. And that is not unusual. Those are considered marketing decisions. Yeah.
Was there somebody over here?
Yes, right here.
Okay, we'll go first. Thank you.
So I obviously haven't read the book because I just bought it.
I know, nobody's read the book. Yeah, yeah.
And from your reading, Les sounds delicious, and I can't wait to meet him. And you mentioned that something prompted you from your brother. Is it dangerous for me to imagine that this is a portrait of your brother, and how close does it get to him?
Yeah, so Les started as being, you know, worked out of my grief over losing my brother, who did die of alcoholism, and so he started that way, but, you know, that's how writing works. It starts with something and, you know, goes off. I mean, my brother was not a NOAA scientist. He was not stupid, but he was not a NOAA scientist. He was certainly not in Boulder. I don't think he barely left our hometown his whole life, and the town took care of him. And so he was in Pleasantville, New York, almost all his life, and taken care of. But, you know, so it's just where I started, and there are some things and like phrases that are his in there, and I really wanted to explore like the you know, what is that like to be like a homeless alcoholic, you know? What is that like? I mean, so that's what you know, writing and reading is. It's empathy. It's like putting yourself in that spot. You know, so the writer experiences it, and then the reader experiences it. And of course, there's a huge, you know, massive range of, you know, alcoholism and homeless alcoholism. there's many other homeless in the book. Boulder's rather famous for homeless who live along the creek, and some are mentally ill, some are there by choice, some are there by bad luck. There's but the city takes care of them. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question over here. Right here
I
first.
don't even write, I'll just
Okay.
talk real loud.
Then Ann.
Do you write, when you're writing a book, do you write sequentially? Or do you-
With sequentially?
I think they can, yes.
Yeah, so usually I do. I just, as long as it takes, I usually just start plugging along, one step after another after another. In this book, it was a rare time when I jumped ahead. When COVID happened. COVID, frankly, was a blessing for my book. I'd already been writing it for 3 years, and I always knew, that the second half, one of my characters was going to be homeless. And then COVID came, I was like, yay! Because it was yet another stressor on her. And I've already forgotten your original question.
Just if you write sequentially.
Oh, yes, so I jumped ahead. So I was still in the first half, and then just because it was so, I was in the thick of COVID, and it was so hot, I sort of needed to get something down. And so I wrote a scene of Shelley in the hospital with COVID. And while everything's going on TV, where so many of my friends had it, where it was so active, I sort of felt this need to get it down. Whereas usually I like things to get the heat off of them. But in this case, I wrote its own short story of just putting Shelley in the hospital. Some of that short story actually was published quickly, has been anthologized twice. It is very much in the novel, but not. It's been broken up, and other characters had to leave. I mean, it was in the 2 years it took me to get back to that point, so much of the story had changed. So usually I write sequentially, but in this particular case,
Good question.
No.
Ann, and then I'm going to go over here.
You describe a lot of, obviously, many, is it on?
Yeah, if you speak right into it.
Environmental issues.
yeah.
Problems. Don't know enough about the book yet to know if it comes from your characters and their comments and their observations, or what you, the author, are putting in.
Yeah.
And do you comment in the book on prescriptions or critique them, or do you resist that?
Oh, what was the last part?
Or do you resist JoeAnne commenting on or critiquing what is done or isn't done about environmental?
Oh, yes. So, no, you can't be preachy like that. That's not, So you simply put the characters under stress. In this book, it's mostly climate-induced stress. Floods, wildfires, and so then Les, who is quite knowledgeable, that might go into riffs about, usually the universe, but then, like in the part I just read, he'll talk about, here's the wildfires coming into town, basically told you so. But you just, no, it's just the characters under stress. I do a great deal of research about climate and experiencing these things like the extreme heat, the wildfire, how the wildfires form, how they spread. I've read books and books and books about fire. And then you just put characters in it and say, good luck. Or not. Or not. Yeah.
That also explains my first question to you about this interweaving, how does that happen?
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said. Any questions on this, in this area? So I'm going to go to Heidi and then Anita.
Thank you both so much. And I wanted to start with a comment about some folks say that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, but connection. And you mentioned the connected crises that these people are going through, or that we are all going through.
Yeah.
And that they are connected. And so I just been thinking about being disconnected from the climate as well, just the nature, and that
Right.
for a lot of people living, and not the world, but I would say a lot of people in our country, we are less connected than some other people to the seasons, the cycles, for a myriad of reasons. So
Right.
there's like this concept of connection, disconnection.
That's right, yes, yes. There's a lot of it being connected to the earth. And Les is the one. Les sleeps on the ground, you know?
And so my follow-up question is, you mentioned a lot of research that you do, I imagine that's nonfiction. Do you read other climate fiction, or do you have other authors that you...
I do, yeah, so, like, oh yeah, I can highly recommend Northwoods by Daniel Mason, although my book group, and there's some book group, the book group is a little mixed about it. They didn't like the many stories, but I loved it because it was, once again, just putting characters under stress as evolution of a piece of property. And so I read climate fiction like that, because fiction has a lot to teach us. And nonfiction I read, and then I feel as if like what fiction writers can do is make that very often dry information into something that can be empathic, that you put, you create a character and empathy and scenes, and then people will feel it. Like nonfiction tells you what happened, and fiction tells you how it felt. And so you are, you're just putting, it's two sides of the same coin, but I do a lot of research. But also it's like to get away from writing. It's like, oh, I will just read this book right now.
That's great. Anita, and then I'll ask you a question.
All right.
I'm just checking on time.
Yeah,
How we doing?
I know.
Yeah.
So I know many actors talk about their relationship with the characters, and I wonder, as in your life as a writer and creating these characters, what happens with your relationship with the characters when the story is supposedly done?
Right.
Does it feel like it's done?
Yeah, yes, it feels, you do miss them. You can't stay with them forever, and because you get so close to them. You are in their minds, that's what you're doing as a fiction writer, and you're there for a long time, 7 years for this last one. And so, once it's over, it's like, Les definitely, I think he's still, because it had been based on my brother, Les still like echoes with me all the time. It's like, what would Les do? What would Les
That's
do?
what I was wondering. Do you have any kind of particular, perhaps a ritual that you do and say goodbye to the character?
Oh, I should. Well, this is it. This is it. Here we are. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Okay, one final question here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. Oh.
Either one.
Yep.
Well, I love Les too, and I love his name. I'm just curious about how he became a shapeshifter. Like, what brought you to making this character into a shapeshifter?
Oh, shape-shifting.
Yeah.
It's Boulder. Okay, so in Boulder, that's rather like a common activity. And, you'll just see like classes for it all the time. It was also like me going into his head to see what it was to be an alcoholic, and it seemed like there was like no step at all, to go into shape-shifting. He's there, he's outside, he's living in the wild, he's living and like, I'm not even sure how much he controls it. Then all of a sudden he is in usually the brain of a hawk. Not often. Sometimes he needs the hawk, and he will let that happen. But mostly he's just sort of drifting along, and it happens. So it just evolved. Like I think probably the first time it happened. As I was writing, I was like, oh, look at you, look at you, shape-shifting like that. And, yeah, so that's sort of how that it was just an evolution. Yeah.
Well, Dawn, you have the mic, so you have to ask a
I
question.
know, she gave me the mic.
Yeah.
I was just, I'm looking forward to reading the book,
Oh, good.
and I was appreciating the cover.
Yeah.
The shopping cart.
Yes.
I've been so aware of consumerism and its relationship.
There you go. And
I think you also wrote an essay, was it in Town Green newsletter or in the newspaper? Or sometime recently that
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you talked about shopping and watching people in their shopping carts or something, but
Right.
it reminded me what I think of often when
Right.
I'm out and about, and how important shopping and buying is to our economy.
Right.
And how much stuff we have.
Stuff.
So
Right.
looking
And
forward to reading this, and I love it.
yes, and so the shopping cart, we had decided early on,
Yeah.
because it's also, the book, has a lot about like late stage capitalism and how, our reliance on fossil fuels that fuel capitalism is killing us. And so like the more stuff we have, the more we are really going in the wrong direction.
I went in the Brass Monkey the other day for the first time. Oh my God.
Yeah, stuff, I know. Yeah. And that's why I have her, Shelley's works for a hoarder, because that's capitalism gone really wrong. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give Mark the last word here, the question.
Yep.
And then I'm going to ask you some closing remarks.
Right.
I'm interested in how you use the dark and the light in your writing. Are you aware of them as different energies that you alternate or manipulate, if you will, or something, or so that it helps to lead you where you want to go?
No, the characters usually lead me, Was that the question about characters, or?
Dark and light.
Oh, dark and light.
Situations that they find themselves in. When you began, it was
Right.
it was a downer. There was like all these details
Right.
about consumerism and such.
Right.
And then when you got to the chapter about less, it just brightened right up.
Yes.
So I don't know if those are energies that you weave throughout your writing, or
Yes, that is not something that I'm ever conscious of while writing. It just is sort of something that happens if I'm, writing a scene that is heavily about, capitalism gone wrong and climate change. It's just like an energy field that comes around me. And then every time I'm writing, less, the world does open up and brighten. And so, and then after the fact, then I can see that going on, the lightness and the darkness going on. But not while you're writing. You don't think a lot while you're writing. You don't think. Thinking is something that comes with editing later, and that while you're writing, it just is like that the words just come, and you just do not ever try to stop them. You have a lifetime to edit those words, but precious few hours to just let the words come on the page and the characters show up however they want. So that's that answer.
Thanks, JoeAnne.
Yeah.
I have one final question, I guess, and a point. But, Town Green is focusing on climate adaptation right here on Cape Ann.
Yep.
And we're focused on the local impact.
Yep.
And neighborhood impact. And Arroyo Circle is based in neighborhoods. It's really, you really feel like you're coming into different kind of neighborhoods, but there's one central neighborhood.
Right.
And so when you think about climate change here in Gloucester, around Cape Ann, our neighborhoods,
Right.
and what's at risk,
Yeah.
from storm surge, extreme weather, extreme heat, flooding, what are you most concerned about, or what do you want people to hear?
About locally.
Yeah.
First of all, everybody go see the Climate Change Film Festival this
right.
weekend.
Saturday.
At the
Gloucester
stage. I'll be there, maybe with a 4-year-old grandchild, but I'll be there. A bunch of shorter films So locally, of course, because we're on the coast, and is probably the biggest worry, although they probably thought that in North Carolina too, that would be where the danger would happen. The danger now can happen anywhere at any time. I suggest you learn, like they do in wildfire areas, like get your go bag and just like pack everything that's by the door before a storm in case you need to evacuate. Evacuation in Gloucester is a problem because we're an island. There's 2 bridges, and certainly the Cut Bridge will be out. So it leaves like 1. So basically, everybody, we all just meet in Dogtown. It will probably be like the safest place if if something catastrophic happens, because not everybody's making it over the bridge. And Dogtown, which is where the community started, it could well be where it ends. Because it will be, as they settled there, because it was the safest place. It could, in the end, be our safest place to be. So that's all. But there's so many unknowns about what can happen. There's so many models. It's all just happening so much quicker than any model predicted. And so, and the fossil fuel companies have let us believe that it's something way off in the future, and where it's now and it's happening. And so, get your go bag, raise your house on stilts if you're on the water. There's great technology out there. Insurance companies will probably have a lot to say about who gets to live where in the end, especially on Cape Ann and on the water. So, there's just, and keep in touch, everybody. Sign up with Town Green, who is like always on top of like emergency stuff and training and sponsoring the climate change films and educating.
Well,
oh, wait, and Gordon is saying there's alcohol. Yes, there's alcohol, snacks, bandanas, and make sure if you've bought a book, I give you a Tito's.
well, everyone, thank JoeAnne Hart.